Howdy and welcome to Curious Blend. I'm your host, Keller Davis, the owner of Createscape Coworking here in Austin, Texas. Curious Blend is a show where we explore the intersections between creativity, business, leadership, and philosophy. In each episode, we dive deep with inspiring guests who share their own unique stories and perspectives. I'm here to learn and stay curious. Today, I'm so excited to welcome our guest, Brandon Guidry, to the podcast. Brandon is a talented designer, marketer, writer, and creative who brings his expertise to craft compelling stories and messages. With a background in journalism from UT Arlington, where he specialized in visual storytelling and web design, Brandon is a true tech enthusiast, foodie, and lifelong learner. Currently, Brandon is the brand and marketing manager at Capital Metro, Austin's public transportation provider, where he's been making an impact since 2012. Beyond his professional life, Brandon is deeply involved with the creative community in Austin, including his work with AIGA. Brandon and I have been friends for well over a decade, and we've shared some incredible experiences from our trips to New York City and Chicago to collaborating on commercial work for Cap Metro. I'm thrilled to have him here today to dive into his creative process, inspirations, and the journey that has shaped his career. Brandon, welcome to Curious Blend, and thank you for doing this today.
Hey, thank you for having me, and thanks for the intro.
You're welcome. Is it too much?
No, I was like, oh, that's it.
Well, I kind of want, I've known you for a while, and I thought it'd be really fun to kind of explore your own creative journey, just because I know little bits and pieces, but I don't know the full story. So I thought that this would be a great chance to kind of have that conversation.
Sure.
So take us back to the very beginning in terms of what inspired you to pursue a career in visual storytelling in design.
Yeah, what inspired me initially was actually had nothing to do with visual. So I've been writing since I was a kid. That's just something I've always held on to, and I signed up to be in a newspaper staff because I thought that I could, I saw the newspaper and they had some poetry, and I always was writing poetry, and so I was like, oh, I'll sign up. I knew nothing about journalism, and so in doing that, I started learning about journalism, and they needed someone to design the paper, and I was like, oh, I think I could probably pick it up, and so that's the very first thing that got me into my career, is just learning about layout. I was really fortunate. My school got a grant my second year working on the newspaper, and they sent professional journalists from the Dallas Morning News to our school to teach us how to do things. And so they taught me Photoshop and Illustrator and all these different things that I use daily. So that was my start.
Yeah. Okay. So you picked up a lot of skills during that time that you were writing and doing journalism.
Yeah. Kind of the shift started happening where it's okay, I think I'm more interested in the design element. Probably by my senior year of high school. And I had gotten a chance to intern at the Dallas Morning News that summer, actually summer of my junior year of high school, and then again in my senior year. And so I was really learning how to do things, and at a professional level, which was cool for me because I was just, soaking it all up. So my interest at that time just really went all to more visual. When I went to college, I decided to focus on still journalism as my track, but specifically visual journalism. So I took a lot of classes on photography and layout and computer graphics and web design. So all those things, while also occasionally taking a class about editorial writing or all the writing stuff as well. So but I knew pretty early on in college that I wanted to specifically work in design.
Yeah. What journalism is so expansive. So it's for me to get to if you were getting to use all those professional tools at that age, that's such a step up from a lot of high school experiences.
Yeah, I would say I was very fortunate. I was able to get some connections based on the fact that, I had these professional journalists that I could call and be like, hey, how could I do this? Or, they would tell me different things that I could do. I had a mentor at the time that she wasn't part of that group, but I was introduced to her from this journalism workshop that I used to go to every weekend, and we would go on trips together and to different conferences and just like be around journalists, professional journalists, and it was funny because we're like, it was meant for for college students originally, and then it opened up to high school kids. By the time I left, there were middle school kids, so she was just chaperoning all these kids around, and getting us some like FaceTime with different people, and yeah, it was just a cool experience, and through that, I was just very fortunate to be able to have those connections and learn about it early on and actually get hands-on experience and not just like this, oh, I want to do this and I have no clue how to do it. Uh, I was really able to know like, oh, I do like this and this is right for me.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting you were involved with, or like you were interning at Dallas Morning News. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I used to read Dallas Morning News daily when I lived in the area, and
Yeah.
I just think that's really cool. Are there other types of mentors that you've had over the years that have like?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's been less official mentors, and there's
Yeah.
people that you like as you start to work with people. There's some that you identify like, oh, like I feel like the way that they work and their attitudes are things you want to like model yourself after. So
Sure.
I had a really at my current job, I had a really good boss when I came in that she was just, I feel like she just struck the right balance of everything. She really like fostered us to excel, I feel like personally. And so I consider her a mentor just because I like now that I'm a manager, it's like some of the stuff that she did and all of that like influences me on how I like interact with my team and kind of what I see my role as a manager being.
Yeah. So you've been at Cap Metro for, I guess, about a little over 10 years, right?
Yeah, I've been there almost 12 years in December.
12 years. Wow. Well, congratulations on that.
Yeah.
How has your career evolved over the time since early high school days in journalism?
I started off strictly in journalism. So I wanted to work at, all the popular newspapers at the time. From there, when I got to college, I worked for the college newspaper, and then I got my sophomore year. I got a job at the Star Telegram, which is the Fort Worth newspaper. So I worked there through college and until I graduated. Probably like 6 months past I graduated, and then I decided I wanted to work in magazines. I was like, oh, I want to try magazines and see how that is. And I didn't really know anyone in magazines, and I had a friend that I went to college with that was working at a local magazine in Fort Worth that was Western magazine, and so I was at first really kind of like, I'm not a Western guy. I don't think that's a fit for me. But at the time, just like, well, let me see. I'll go do an interview, and I really totally treated it like interview practice in a way. But I had one of the best interviews, just like meeting a human for the first time, and like just feeling like you clicked with the hiring manager there, and so that really sold me on that job. And I went there, and I spent 4 years at that magazine, and then I decided to just leave. I've always wanted to live in different cities. I came to Austin just with no job. I decided to quit my job. I had some freelance stuff that I was doing that was able to like keep me able to live and stuff.
I think I remember talking to you about that even before you moved to Austin.
Yeah, because I met you like maybe a year before I made that decision, and I had no idea at the time that I was lost because I was totally planning to go to New York. Like that was my goal. It was like New York or Chicago.
Right.
I'm like I would die in Chicago now because it's like too cold for me. But my plan was totally New York, not in Texas anywhere. I had I have a lot of family here in Austin, so it just felt too much like home. Like it didn't feel like I was going anywhere different. And I had a family member here that was that had a terminal disease, and that was my best friend. So I just decided, okay, I'm gonna come down, and it's gonna be new to me as far as like living there as an adult. It's a very creative city, so I know there'll be places that I can get a job, and then I'll be able to spend time with my family. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly selfishly glad that you ended up in Austin. But yeah, it definitely makes, I mean, it makes a difference having, family members, I think, around the Austin area.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely useful to be able to call people that are nearby, to see them, to bring some of that familiarity. So yeah, it's worked out, being able to have that network. And also I think another thing, like I'm not a native of Austin, but I have a lot of knowledge about what it was, what has been here, like, and a lot of historical knowledge just from either experiencing it here. I used to spend summers here, so growing up.
I
So
did too. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like I was very familiar with the city, especially the east
Yeah.
side, and that helps when you like are working on the kind of work that I do now, because
Sure.
I have some context of what it is, what it's been, what it could be.
Is that something that came up when you were initially applying for that job, or
No, I did not apply for that
is it just
job.
something? Is it just something you realized,
Yeah,
oh,
no,
I know a lot about Austin.
it's something that like as things, because when I first moved here, the first 6 months I was freelancing, and I was basically just in my own home office, and I had my roommate and cousin at the time, and I had my family, and that's like pretty much all I say. I would come see you occasionally. I didn't have a lot of friends here in Austin, so it was pretty solitary. I feel like all my jobs that I've had are like have come to me in a sense. Like I was just really looking for finding other creatives. I'm in the city. I've been here 6 months. I was the first like 3 months. I was driving home to Dallas every weekend to hang out with my friends.
Mhm.
Then you
Yeah.
start to realize like, okay, I need to actually settle into the city that I live in.
Yeah.
And like build connections. Well, professionally, I could go to this AIGA party, but I was just totally looking for like friends, really, like not a job or anything. Because I was, like I said, I was trying to do the I knew it wasn't for me because I know my personality type, but I was like, I want to try like doing my own business and just give it a go, like early enough to know like if it's maybe I have a wrong idea about it.
Mhm.
And so I did it, and I didn't like it because it's too much.
This is for design?
Yeah, I was doing
Yeah.
design, so I was doing like I was designing some magazines. My brother and my cousin, they're like NFL agents, and they did a lot of football related events and stuff. And so I met some people that ran other football camps, and I was doing things with them. So it was just uh, and some web work. So I was just kind of like, but I had my main thing that was paying me consistently, and like was a magazine. So
Freelancing is one thing, and then starting a business is a whole other thing,
yeah.
because it's like there's just so much involved with it, and it's
Yeah, and I only went the freelance route, and I was like, I don't want to do this, like because it's just too much. I feel like as a creative, my like the way that I operate is less of a like flashy like salesman type person. Like my qualities are more valuable and not just design, like in
yeah.
other areas. And so I always kind of knew that about myself, like that I really thrive in like corporate like situations in a way,
Mhm.
which is kind of weird to say, but just pretty design isn't like doesn't do it for me. So I need like more, and 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 that's kind of how I'll always operate. Just like I think it goes back to me starting off as a writer. Like I care about what is it saying, like what is the message,
Yeah.
what's the intent of this. And so I think when you, as a designer specifically working freelance, they want like much flashier designs, or like big illustrations, or like all
Yeah.
that type of stuff.
But so
Which
much of design is practical,
yeah,
it's like about
exactly.
how people respond to it,
And
and
that's kind of the area that I like live
sure.
in. Is more of a practical, like what is like not just visual design, but like the design of what is the purpose of this thing.
Yeah.
you know.
And and it seems like a lot of the work you get to do at Cap Metro, like, is related to that because it's practical for people who are using the buses and,
Definitely. It's a lot of considerations that you're balancing, like think something that visually you want to do something and it seems like a simple change and it might be, oh no, we can't say that because of, it's much more like complicated than that. Like at the newspaper and magazine, I also like spent time trying to understand like what the stories were about, like what's the best way to illustrate them and like what's the
Mm,
best artwork to go with them and all that stuff. But in a newspaper, it's like you got 3 hours to do that. In a magazine, you got maybe like uh, a couple weeks or at most, So
yeah.
and everything's, you're
So you
uh
can sit with it a little bit more.
yeah, and I think here at my current job is like things are on a longer scale. So like still very short, quick deadlines, that pop up and all that stuff. But the main like guts of what we do are like bigger decisions and they have bigger impact to people's lives, I guess, at least to me, than wanting to like really try to do your best there
Mhm.
as far as like from for what my role is. Like the best that I can do to help communicate whatever the thing is that we're working on is always where I'm trying to land. So
Is there a particular project that you can think of over the last 12 years that's, like, been the most rewarding for you, that you really liked working on the most?
yeah, I think the one that's most rewarding was also the one that nearly killed me.
It always is, isn't
So,
it?
it's
The hardest projects are
yeah,
always.
it's the most challenging one as well. But we have these things, they're called transit plans. So they're like 10-year lookouts of what does our planning team, like this people who plan our routes out and schedules, and they
Mhm.
work with operations teams, like the people who dispatch buses and hire operators and all these things. And there's this whole transit plan that comes up maybe a year or 2 years before this 2018 project. We had done one. It was the first one that I had ever like. I had done like the branding and marketing of that transit plan design, but I didn't really realize like where it went from there. You think like 10 years, oh, like, that's like far off, So as the plan has it, it's like we want to get to this place in the 10 years. So that one was called Connections 2025. So you're thinking like,
Right.
oh, by 2025 we'll be here. Well, in
Not to be
2018,
confused with Project 2025.
yeah, yeah, there's a lot of 2025s out there. So this one was the transit plan, but then the implementation piece of it, the biggest part of it was like redoing Cap Metro's routes significantly, like over half of their routes, changing to
Wow.
a more frequent service. With frequency is like how often the bus comes. So
Yeah.
if it's a normal route might be like 20 to 30 minute frequency, and there was like uh, at the time, in that transit plan, the study is like customers really feel good about 10 to 15 minute frequencies because then they really stop paying attention to like their watch, because it's like, oh, I'll just go out there and wait instead of being like, oh, when is it coming, that type of deal.
Right.
So that was one of the like big findings, is going to like this higher frequency network. This particular effort was called Cap Remap. With all the things that throughout changing, that means that all of the, for marketing perspective, all of the literature, all the maps are being redrawn. All of the information that's on the map is being vetted. You're doing all this community outreach, brochures to show people what's coming to, and then with all of them changing, it was really hard to figure out how to communicate that best because um, it wasn't just one route to convey. It's like, well, no, your route may be getting cut off here, but it's because it's part of this larger system. Because the whole goal was we're making a better system. Everything connects a little bit better, and it kind of like makes all these efficiencies. So it brought a lot of work on my part
Yeah. I can
in a
imagine.
in a short time frame, and because my role at the time was I was the person making all of the customer like route brochures, and ACL was happening. I was the one doing an ACL brochure or South by. like all those things, I was the one conveying service information because I was really familiar with how to convey it. So that fell into, into my lap, but but I also ended up kind of being the project manager of the whole effort in my department, and then that kind of bled into, we had two project managers in the agency, but I was like ending up also doing similar work as them as I like planned out all of the things we had to do. So I had a huge spreadsheet schedule that I put together. I was coordinating all these things, and it started to become like everyone's depending on me to do my work, because even the like operators were like, can we get, I need to see the map, like, because they want to prepare for what they're going to drive. And so it really is, the way it was rewarding is because I had to really work with the whole agency. It was the first time I was already working with a lot of different people, but it was the first time where I really had to work with everyone. At some point I was like, every department was like leaning on me for something, and
Right.
really kind of my like motto in general is, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it good,
Sure.
and there were a lot of like people concerned because we got this decision, and I think it was either 6 or 9 months time frame, which like sounds like a long time, but isn't, to do all these changes. And at the time we had like these bus stop signs that were like, looked like they're straight out the 80s, like they were bad, they were hard to maintain, they're like, there is so much like bad stuff about them. And
So you had to rework everything.
we had to rework it, but they wanted to do it just in the same style of that, and we had already done all this research on like, oh no, there's a better way to do this, to make it a little more efficient, to provide better customer information. So we had done all this stuff, but everyone was like concerned about the timing. Like, no, we're just gonna do them in the old style and just put the number, or we'll put stickers over the things, and it's like, just like, no. And so I just was also in the process of like, if I'm redoing things, I have to redo them. I need to redesign them.
Yeah.
Because there's no point, like, this is the time, we're a public company. We're not going to, like, it's fiscally responsible for me to do it now. If I know that I have a design that I want to implement, that it's better, we've done testing on it, we've gotten customer feedback, then why would I spend my energy redoing the old way that's bad? So I had to have a lot of like those conversations with people and convince them that like, no, like, we can do this, like, and it's bringing more work on me. It's just like, I'm gonna be the one doing it,
but you believed in the project.
Yeah, because I just don't like it's just how I am in general. Like, if I'm gonna do it, I don't want to waste my time.
Sure.
And it's like, if it's something brand new and there's still something in the corner that like, that is just bothering you, like, let's just solve it now, and then we don't have to worry about it. And like, you deal with this a lot with being a public like company, is you don't know that you're going to get those funds to do that thing, and you also, as a taxpayer, you want to also be like, I don't want to waste money, and redo things, and that happens, but it's not the intention. So it was really, it was a lot of work that had a lot of different people in the agency and outside partners helping us to get it done. But I was like, literally, no joke, going into the office at 4 a.m. and leaving at 8 p.m. sometimes, to just come back at 2 or 3 to try to finish all the stuff that
those
I
are
had
crazy
to do.
hours.
So it was just, and that's not like every day, but it was just, there were times where it's like, I have these things to do, and I just, that's my personality, is like, I'm gonna do what I need to do to, like, if I feel like strongly about it, then I'm not afraid to put my time and effort into it to make it what I envision it to be. Because we were already doing a lot of like internal branding work that was getting us into like, oh, we actually have like real designers. Like, there's a level of, it's transit, but everything has design, even if it's bad design. Something was designed, whether you put intention into it or not. Like, and so it really, I think, helped me to implement things that I felt were better customer experiences. And I also put a lot of effort in making sure that I was like, even the way we were communicating about the change, we had a whole brochure that was like 50 something pages, like just showing you all, because it's system wide.
Mm-hmm.
And like really working on that, like how the narrative is like no, it needs to be more visual. Like we need to say less about this. Also we need to get people excited about it and show the real benefits and all these things. So it was just a really like comprehensive project that allowed me to use all of my skills.
Well, and it's the kind of thing that also affects so many people who are commuting in Austin, and a lot of their livelihoods depend on, being able to get around and
Exactly.
understand everything with it. And so design makes such a big difference there. Do you ever find that especially practical design is like underappreciated because it's not as flashy?
Like I'm all for great looking, nice, slick, flashy design, but it also has to have the core of what it's meant to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people get past that sometimes because they get caught up into what can I do rather than being like, what is this piece supposed to do? Like, what
Yeah.
is the intent of this thing? Like, if you need to know really quickly just the gist, like I don't need to decorate it. Like here, like
Right.
if I'm throwing in things that are like distracting you from the actual intent of it. So I'm really like strong about that.
Especially with short attention spans, like
Yeah,
people
and
just, look at it quickly.
exactly. And you think about like working at Cat Metro, like no one is no one is looking for the bus system to be like this great inspiration of design. Like it's not looked at as like an Apple or a Nike or all the typical tropes of design, right? No one's
You're
looking
not
for
running
that.
Super Bowl ads.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And it's not to say that we're like that what I do is perfect or anything like that, but the purpose is to give people information and to give it to them uh a wide range of audiences, people who can read really well and people who can't read at all.
Mhm.
So it's just like you have to do a lot of work to figure out how to communicate very complicated things because um, it is a complex. It's not easy. Even people who are super educated, they get very nervous getting on transit if they've never done it before. There's a barrier, an intimidation factor, and so you have to kind of work with that and also try to get people to see the benefits.
Yeah. Well, the very first time I ever went to New York was with you,
Mm-hmm.
and at least in my adult life, I'd never been on subways before, and
Yeah,
I think, like, at that point, our friend Brian was, like, navigating us through a lot of that stuff, but I've been to New York so many times since then, and I've relied on the way that the role that design plays with being able to get around a city like that, and
yeah,
it's I don't know, it's just really interesting.
yeah. It definitely helps. I mean, like when I went to Tokyo, I didn't get lost once.
Yeah.
Well, I got lost once at the very end, which was
Thank a
unfortunate.
designer.
But
Yeah.
like it just like I don't read Japanese, so it's just yeah, it
Yeah,
makes it
yeah, it has
very
to transcend language.
yeah, yeah. You have to just like if you're going to airport, uh, you have to kind of feel like this is the right way,
Right.
or it's not the right
Yeah,
way.
exactly. Yeah, no,
So
wayfinding is important. I mean, like, even at Createscape, it's a 7,000 square foot office facility, and
mhm,
we have signs everywhere,
yeah,
and it's not the best design as far as, just the fact that there are, like, a lot of signs just to kind of, spread out, but it's, but there's a lot to consider because there's so much that you would that's not as intuitive, for the masses
yeah.
as you would think. I was gonna ask, like, who are some of your biggest, like, inspirations, or, like, where do you take inspiration from when it comes to, like, art or creativity or design? Or is there anyone you kind of, like, really kind of follow their career?
I would say the most professional like designer that I really got into for years ago. His name is like Michael Beirut, part of Pentagram, which is a famous design agency. So Paula Schur is also part of Pentagram. She's the one who did like the city logo and Shake Shack.
Okay.
And I mean, she's done a ton of stuff. So
Yeah.
she's got some interesting documentaries. One on Abstract, which is on Netflix, like documentary on creatives.
Oh, cool.
Um, and so she's pretty cool too. But yeah, I don't really. I didn't go the art school route, so I didn't really get into following other designers when I'm creating something. Like when I'm actually doing it, I don't like to intake anything else unless it's related to like trying to solve that particular problem. Like I don't like to because I don't want to copy things, which I mean we all copy things, but I don't want to copy things like strictly. I'd rather it be like I'm like when I'm not working on something, I'm observing things and being like, oh, that's cool.
Right.
Like, oh, I like that. Just various things like that. But I try not to look at directly at things that I'm doing at the time because I don't want to feel like I'm ripping something off.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's like someone tells me literally like I want exactly like this. It's like okay, well then then I need to do what you want me to do. But yeah, so a lot of my inspiration really comes from my surroundings, and that can be like the people that I'm around. So whatever other designers that I might be working with at the time are just coworkers in general.
Mm-hmm.
Just like learning, I like to learn how people see things and how they operate, and like I can adapt, so I try to like hit uh what I think they're like. If I'm going to a meeting with someone and like every time they're giving me like a similar criticism, then I know like, oh, the next time I need to address that criticism before I even go in there, because there's no point of like I know they're gonna bring that up. So I get inspired by like the people I'm around, the things I'm doing at the time. Maybe there's a album that I really like at the time that that because I'm an album listener, so I listen to albums straight through and I'll
Mm.
have them on repeat. So I'm just like, it just kind of I like to get deeper into things rather than like skip from song to song, artist to artist. So it might be an album of the time, it might be a movie or a TV show that I recently watched.
Yeah. You just
Um,
kind of absorb it all like from different
yeah,
sources.
and it comes out like in different, like I don't act, like it just comes out. Like, you see something and you might be like, oh, okay, like that's a cool. I like to see cool approaches, or like clever things like, oh, that's like I wouldn't have thought to do that. And a lot of times when I feel like I'm in a creative rut, or like I feel like the thing that I'm doing I've done like 10,000 times, I do a like mental challenge to myself and say, what would I do if it wasn't me? Like if I didn't do it how I would do it,
Huh.
what would that look like? And that's been some of my favorite designs. And it's like
Oh, that's
because I'm
cool.
really just like trying to get out of my own habit. Every designer, every writer, everyone that is a creative, you have styles and things that you lean into. And I think when you're younger and something, you don't always realize that, and your style will come, like it will start to rise. And like like I can look at anything that comes from my team and be like, I know who designed. I don't have to see their name. I know who did that. Like I don't need to ask because I know their tendencies. I know the things that is appeasing to them, and I'm like that too. So I think like I said, I think every creative does it. I think when you're in the early parts of your career where you are like looking at a lot of things and you're doing a lot of imitation, it's harder to figure out because you're doing a lot of imitation.
Right.
I really like uh, being around others who kind of think differently than me because I know that I can get methodical on how I think.
Yeah. Is there an album you've had on loop recently?
Yes. Yeah, I've been listening to. So this is my favorite rapper, so I'm almost always listening to him when he has a new album. But I've been listening to this album "Samurai" by Lupe Fiasco, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna be in my top Spotify Wrapped or whatever. Mainly because it's only 8 tracks and it's really short. It's like 30
Okay,
minutes.
yeah.
So it's like over
It's
by the
easier to
time I
just
can
keep it
think
on
about
loop.
it, it's like, oh yeah. And then I think, oh, I want to hear that song again or whatever. So another inspiration for me is just like the problem because I'm kind of the person that like I wanna solve it. Like I
Yeah.
just like uh that's just my personality is like what is the like actual problem and can I like do anything to help like to figure it out. So that's always, I would say that's like the main driver for me of anything. Is like, if I feel like it's not a real problem, then I'm probably gonna be like unmotivated and be like, it's not like whatever you want to do. Like, like I won't have strong opinions. And so
Right.
I always have this like interesting thing when I work with people for the like first time, or like I start a new job or anything like that, where like naturally I'm an introvert and I'm like quieter. And I'm also like an observer. So it's like before I
Mm.
like start coming on with strong opinions, I'm gonna like try to see what is the landscape here, like what's going on. And
Yeah,
so
being an observer is a strength.
yeah, but it always like catches people off guard when I like, because I also can be very opinionated and very strong in my opinion, and very
Yeah.
like challenging in the sense of like I like to think that I'm not like rude about it, but like if I feel that it's the right thing to do, you're gonna hear it. Like it's not gonna be a secret. And
Right.
so I think it's but it always throws people off because they like, oh, I thought you were really, really quiet when and then it's like, oh, but you actually have like a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
So it's funny in that sense because I have that kind of shift. Biggest thing for me is just trying to make sure that I'm allowing my team to do well.
It sounds like, especially like with your focus on people and really trying to understand different mindsets and how that informs your decision making. It's great that you're in the role that you are, where you can have an even greater impact.
There is a level I have to recognize by being in the role that I'm in and like working with all the people, that I have a level of privilege that like someone that I just hired a year ago doesn't have.
Mm.
So it could be their idea or their desire, but I have to be the one to be like, yeah, we should do this.
Right.
Like I have to
Yeah.
make the way for that to happen because I have more credibility with the other audiences that are like, why are we doing it like that?
Right.
you know?
Right. Where are you eating around town right now? Like
Oh
what are your
man.
favorite restaurants or food?
So I started eating the Jubilee burgers,
Oh, it's so good.
which are, yes, so good.
The
Uh,
trailer or the one off the
so I had
airport?
the trailer first, the one on Lamar,
Yeah.
but I live closer to the actual storefront and on airport. I go to Amaya's Mexican food.
Oh, I haven't been there.
I like it now. Um, it's not gonna be something that like top list of food in Austin, but it is like I do like it, and so I go there. Yeah,
I have one more burger recommendation I'll just throw in there too.
yeah.
Not a damn chance burger, like NADC or
I
whatever.
saw the name of, I saw the branding of it,
It's
but
so good.
I
It's
haven't.
like I shouldn't have done this show hungry because now I'm just thinking about food. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's
that's
really
what
good. You
my whole like team. That's what if we're in together in person, we just always like go into food. It just
yeah.
happens. So
Oh yeah, you have
I
to.
think that's the thing in Austin. You're like, there's such good food. So
There is. I know.
yeah, kind of spoiled.
Well, thank you for being on the show today. I really appreciated that. I feel like I've learned a lot about like the methodology you take to, your craft, and it's been really inspiring for me. So I really appreciate it. So
Sure. Thanks for having me. Thanks for getting me out of my comfort zone with this. So.
I'm always trying to push people outside their comfort zone, even myself.
Yeah,
Like I'm not used
exactly.
to, I wasn't used to being in front of a camera either. So, yeah, thank you so much, Brandon. I really appreciate it.
Cool.
Thanks for watching Curious Blend. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to the show. Leave us a review. It makes a big difference. I really appreciate it. Until next time, I'm Keller Davis. Stay curious.